Dearest Heavenly Father, thank you for this platform. Thank you for this conversation today because you love your people. You love your creation. Lord, you not only gave us a soul, but you gave us a body. And Lord, we want to learn how to be excellent stewards of this body that you have given us in this very complex world, Lord God, where so much is happening. I thank you for giving Joseph, Kevin, and I simple words for difficult things that we're dealing with day to day. We love you, Father, and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. We have an interesting subject today, like always, and we're going to talk about the physical things about how we can help our mental health. And it's going to range from going outside to what we eat and all that fun stuff. So I want to pass this on over to Laura to give us a little bit more insight on what we're going to talk about.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Joseph. It's great to be with you guys, as always. Well, it struck me again today that, one of the things that the three of us firmly believe in is that there's the physical component of mental health. And isn't that interesting to even say that? Because most people think of mental health as only being emotional, but there's a huge component of what we can be doing physically in order to have better mental health. And we're going to say to you, the listener, we know you say, I've heard it before, but you know what? There are some things we got to hear it again and again and again and again. And so we're going to talk about things like blood glucose. We're going to talk about things like grounding, fresh air, nutrition, because what we want to do is remind you that whatever you're dealing with, it can be helped with these suggestions. You can take your health that's good and make it great. You can take it if it's poor and you can make it good. So what do you think about that, guys?
I think it's an excellent suggestion. There are so many variables to our mental health, and we have a lot of physiological and neurological contributions and variables that take place and make us think we're losing our mind, but when actually it could be a physical problem.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think we have plenty in this world, and sometimes that can be a distraction. It can add to our uh, the downfall of our mental health, and so if we have an idea of what to avoid or what to do, we're going to have better options in being able to take and get out of our depression or anxiety or anything like that that can come up. So, yeah, I agree.
Well,
I
one of
think,
the
oh,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
Laura. No, go
I
ahead,
was
Laura.
going to say one of the things that the listener may have heard or heard not have not heard, is something as simple as grounding, which is basically going barefoot, on grass and anything natural. They say, even tile or concrete, believe it or not. The only thing that supposedly you can't ground on is blacktop. From what I understand, right? So I just looked it up, So here's what grounding is. It's known as earthing. It's a therapeutic technique that involves making direct contact with the earth, such as walking barefoot on grass or soil. It is believed to help balance the body's electrical charge and may provide various health benefits. Now, here's the interesting thing. I did not know until a couple years ago that all of us, when we were wearing leather shoes, believe it or not, we were always grounding. But with the implementation of plastic sneakers, which all sneakers for the most part that we buy today are all plastic, it's not grounding. Now, it's interesting that if the science is correct, that God has literally made it to where we discharge built up electrical energy in our body into the earth, right? And it wouldn't be just like the creator to do something like that. But then man, not always in step with what God has done, we have shifted. And think about it, listener. since it's true that we now, most of us all wear plastic shoes and we're not grounding, how much of a difference that could make in just our health. So think about this, listener. When's the last time you went walking on the beach or in the grass in your own backyard? And if you're like most people, you'll say, I can't even remember the last time.
Laura, that's an interesting point. I've read articles about that. Just don't tell the tourism and the visitor agencies at the beaches that, but when it could just be we were walking on the beach with our bare foot, and that's the reason we feel better, not because the hotels are so plush and the food's so good. Don't tell them that, or well, or maybe tell them that they can put it on their brochures or something.
I like I like that because I came from a background in low voltage. So I worked with telephones and there would be problems if grounding was incorrect. There's going to be problems, those are things that we would troubleshoot to try to find. If we had a bad ground, there would be humming and other things that would go on. Or if there was a stray ground, it would cause things not to work. So I think there's a lot that goes into grounding. God didn't put man on earth in a sterile environment, right? The If we look at things like compasses, we have polarity. Electricity works in polarity. Our bodies have electro impulses that go throughout our body that cause our muscles to be able to either contract or relax or whatever that looks like. And so our bodies are electrical. They have isn't it amazing? We don't think of it that way. But we're also, our bodies could be a conduit for electricity too if we're not careful. And so,
Yeah.
you know, you don't want to be electrocuted. But grounding was something I didn't know about really until a couple of years ago. And I actually have a grounding pad if it works.
Yeah.
That's the thing, if it works, right here at my desk that my feet are on. And it goes into the one of the sockets where the grounding part is. They make it very simple not to be able to put it in the wrong socket. But those types of things you can get other things like sheets and other things. I would love to go outside where we live and go barefoot, but we have these pesky little fire ants
Mm.
that are here that can leave really nasty welts on your feet. Um, and so be careful on where you go out to ground yourself. Make sure that there's no thorns or fire ants or other things that'll get you. But I think we need to create those types of environments close to our house or go to a beach. We live close to a lake, and so we can go to a little beach at the county park and walk around and be able to ground ourselves. Where I grew up in California, my parents live on the Sacramento River, and we would spend most of our days out there on the river and our feet either in the water or on the sand and just have that environment. Not only was it a great place to be, but I didn't realize I was grounding myself. So grounding is a great thing to look into.
Yeah. And I didn't even know that you had a grounding mat, and that's why we talk about these things. We don't even know how other people are already doing it or they could learn, because all of us at one time heard grounding and go, what? What in the world is that? Well, before we started this call, listener, I never cease to be amazed at how much these two gentlemen know. And so today that proved to be true again, because one of the things I love about Joseph and Kevin and I, the way that we work with our clients, is we always see our clients holistically. We see you as spirit, we see you with emotions, and we see you with physical body. And that's why we're focusing on the physical today. So I mentioned to Kevin, just asking him if he has any background in understanding of glucose, because that's such a huge part of a person's health. And again, we're focusing today on physical health and how it affects mental health. And I was delighted, as Joseph was delighted to hear Kevin say, "Oh yeah, I know a lot about the subject." So I'm going to toss you that ball, Kevin, and see if you might want to educate all of us about glucose.
Okay, well, let me start with an antidote. I mentioned to people, or a good many of my clients, the need to have things medically or physiologically ruled out or ruled in, and that those variables can affect us or make us think that we have mental health. So the antidote is such. I had a lady bring me her husband once, and she said, "Hey, this guy is so irritable, mean. If you don't help him, I'm going to divorce him." And I was like, "No pressure here. I wish you would have brought him 5 years ago." And so I give him all these things to do. I hear about how his anger and his how mean he is to his wife, and I give him all these anger management things to do. And his wife is waiting in the car, and it's a pleasant day. It's not too warm, so she's praying and hoping and expecting that the session goes well. And he goes back to the car, and she says, "Hey, how did it go?" And he says, "That guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I've tried that stuff 1,000 times and it doesn't work. And I am not savvy enough or keen enough as a clinician to understand that he has ill-managed blood glucose levels and is causing him to be irritable about all of the time." Then what I have done as a clinician is added to his guilt and shame, really. I have done him a big disservice because he's like, "Well, man, I'm a loser. I could, I see all these therapists and I can't measure up." And so, because we haven't taken the opportunity to rule out some of those physiological things, then his mental health stuff he won't overcome, because he thinks, again, it's true mental health when it could be other variables. And so blood glucose levels are just one of several factors. Our blood glucose levels our healthy levels should run from 80 to 120 milligrams per deciliter. The Europeans and Canadians and the British or other areas of the world may use different measurements, but our blood glucose levels can increase or decrease based upon our consumption of foods or lack thereof. We can be hypoglycemic, which means low blood glucose levels, or we can be hyper. The hyper is usually the one that's great is the great problem out there. Blood glucose levels consistently above 200, and that can cause all kinds of complications, and it can make you even think you're losing your mind. And so what I usually send people to not only get their blood glucose levels, but their thyroid levels and all kinds of stuff tested if they're really going through a lot. And so you probably need a person. You need to go have that tested. Your A1C tested, which gives you an average of blood glucose levels over the course of 3 months. And then if you want other things tested, like your insulin production and all kinds of things, you'd have to go see an endocrinologist, because they're the specialists, and the general practitioners or the family physicians, usually don't test for the minutia of the glucose levels. They just test the overalls to have a quick look-see kind of thing.
Excellent.
Yeah. I know that there's a lot of people that, and we've mentioned this before, there's a lot of people that are pre-diabetic, and so our blood sugar can cause different health issues, which does affect our mental health. I know that sometimes we think that things are normal when they actually aren't. And so if you're dealing with somebody who thinks, "Oh, everybody else is making me irritable, everybody else is the problem, I'm not the problem," and what Kevin has taught us peer counselors to do is, hey, have them go get their blood sugar or go get a checkup. When was the last time you got a checkup? What did they see? Is there anything there that is causing them any distress? To wonder if there is a internal problem, a physical problem that's causing a mental situation to happen. And so it's very important to make sure that we're healthy. I know that I have seen people, once they get things under control, they seem like a different person. And and there was and I'd like to touch on a little bit later on thyroid, but the blood glucose thing is still relatively new to me, and so it's going to be something I'm going to be talking with clients that I find who are angry or are
Yeah.
in constant conflict with people.
Yeah, because, and I'm so glad that you said that, Joseph, because yeah, as we learn these things, right? Just like you mentioned the thyroid, I should be thinking more about people's thyroid again, you know. But the thing is that, listener, the reason we want to talk about this is because if your blood sugar is too low, you're going to get a certain set of symptoms. If it's too high, you're going to get a certain type of symptoms. Now, listener, did you know that they have actually called dementia type 3 diabetes? See, this is brand new. This is scientific. This is cutting edge. And what they realize is that insulin is the real issue. But what we are able to measure day by day is our blood glucose. Our blood glucose matters. And, as Kevin might talk more about that, or even if you just walk out what he's already shared, right? What the insulin and the blood glucose are working together. And what they have come to find out is that when in the background, back to what Kevin said, is that the glucose is not getting into the cells. And so the body keeps sending out insulin. What's happening is that people's systems are so flooded with insulin that it is creating diabetes, type 2 diabetes, but it's also, they are now saying dementia is type 3 diabetes. So when we say that, we care enough about this subject to share it with you because it is affecting you physically, but it's also affecting your mental health. Like, these are tools that go beyond getting a prescription for an antidepressant. We're not against you being on an antidepressant if that's what you need in the short term while you work through emotional issues and some physical issues to get you over that hump. But the three of us are very passionate to say, if you're dealing with a physical issue, and or a mental health issue, the pill is not going to get to the root of what is really causing it.
That's exactly right. As a matter of fact, there's some empirical studies out there, good studies, not just from Crackerjack teams, that suggest antidepressants only work 14 to 25% of the time. They're finding that good talk therapy and exercise and good nutrition is better. But yet the psychiatric medical model out there is, hey, give me a prescription. When for thousands of years we depended on the food that we ate to get better, and community, and talking to our grandmothers and moms and dads. And so just the last few decades, it's almost like our medical pharmacological model is our God now. But we do need that stabilization sometimes. So I'm not saying don't go see your doctor, but we have to think more thoroughly and cut and research all the alternatives. But let me mention a couple other things about blood glucose. When I was growing up, moms put a bottle in our mouth with cow milk when we were babies, if they couldn't breastfeed, or if at the end of their breastfeeding they had to go back to work or whatever, they put cow milk in our mouth. But lo and behold, when I entered the diabetes field in the mid 80s, by the time the late 80s came around, there were a lot of studies that indicated that the enzymes in cow milk broke down the enzymes that our guts made and affected our pancreas, and it led to a lot of diabetes patients. Cow milk. That's the reason the Middle Eastern people drink goat milk and various other things. But anyway, so that was kind of unique. And also, I started to do a lot of research that ladies who became diabetes patients during pregnancy, 35% of those became full-blown diabetics after some years after pregnancy. And so those are kind of things clinically when I ask a patient or they tell me about their pregnancy or whatever, and they say, yeah, I became a diabetic. My glucose levels were off the charts during pregnancy. I tuck that back and I come back to later to that in case they're having what appears to be mental health problems. And then I pursue that later on because it could be a contributing factor. And so there's just so much and a lot of people will start in a hypoglycemic stage. In other words, their blood glucose levels are low consistently, and they have low energy. They're lethargic and all kinds of things, and then it kind of changes to hyper later on. So there's a pendulum of even a diabetes swing, and I've even known patients who have I forgot the term, but their blood glucose levels can change dramatically in a matter of seconds, and they have to wear insulin pumps because um, they can fall out immediately if they're not careful. My dad, he had a PhD in microbiology and just MBA from Stanford and all kinds of stuff. Very well educated. He worked in blood glucose for a number of years, and I started out as just run the money to the bank and typing letters for him because people couldn't read his handwriting. So, and then I grew into the blood glucose and then started representing his products in the drugstores across the United States and all kinds of things. It was pretty neat. I enjoyed it. Um, but he started to he worked with the guys who created the insulin pumps and all that. He really did. He was a very, very, very intelligent guy. But this glucose can mimic mental health. It really can. And so that's just, as Joseph mentioned, we teach our peer counselors to try to get people to go for those examinations so that they won't, because if we are trying to do mental health interventions or methodologies to improve our mental health, but our blood glucose levels is unknown or our condition is unknown and is defeating us every single time, then we're really taking two steps back and only one forward. We're defeating ourselves, but then we're like, wow, I can't get better. I must be a loser. And so Satan dwells in secrecy and stealth mode. He would rather to exhaust us, attacking our mental health and not knowing the physiological contributions so he can exhaust us. He would rather have us chasing our tail. And when I work with a patient and lo and behold, they have a thyroid problem or blood glucose problem, and we do something with their diet or some other interventions, then it's a weight off of their shoulders because they know it's not sin. They know it's not a deficiency in their faith or their prayer life or something. And it's like freedom. And so it's very important to have those things considered.
I agree because if you have a client and they are constantly in conflict with people, or they're constantly being, I would say, either in conflict or they have relationships that are just dying off, they're broken relationship after broken relationship. If they do realize that it's their health, how much of that could they have avoided? And been able to, because we all have feelings, and some people, they don't realize that their body is sending them signals, or what their brain is sending their body signals in that fight or flight, and they may look at somebody and go, why are you doing this to me? And the other person's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And yet they're receiving signals and they're interpreting that in their brain to think that they are against me or they're creating conflict, when in actuality their body is sending them a signal going, hey, there's something not right going on. And so they're not putting two and two together to figure out that, hey, my body's sending my brain signals and I'm interpreting it as conflict, but I don't know where that conflict's coming from. And I'll give you a story because I mentioned this before. When I worked in California, I worked for a company that did a lot of low voltage structured wiring, and we would put cables in for businesses so that they could have internet and all that fun stuff. And my boss was from New York, and he would fly off the handle all the time. And I thought, it's just the New York in him, right? That's how people are. And then he would come in and he would be like all upset and pulling on wires and doing things. And my supervisor would say, "Go home." You tell the boss, "Go home." And he'd look at him and go, "Okay." And he'd walk out the door. And one day I saw him and he just had this smile on his face. He was kind of like, I'm like, something's different. What is going on? And finally I asked my boss, I said, "What's different about you?" He goes, "Oh, I had a thyroid problem. I had surgery. I'm better now." I'm like, wow. Because it was a totally switch. It was switched. I mean, he went from being just on edge all the time, angry, to I mean, I wanted to look at him and go, "Dude, what are you taking?"
Yeah.
Because something's different about you. But that was the first time, and this was 25 years ago. The first time I had ever heard anything about having an overactive thyroid or any type of thyroid problem. And I could see the difference in him versus how he was before and how he was after.
Wow, what a story. And what you were saying made me think about how our bodies are constantly talking to us. The problem is oftentimes we don't know what our body's communicating, or even worse, we try to shut our bodies up, right? We do it with drugs, whether they be prescription drugs or illegal drugs or caffeine, and what we do is we silence the body without even knowing it. One of the things, listener, that can be a game changer for you, it's just a tool. But right now, continuous glucose monitors are available to everybody without a prescription. Now, that's a big deal because it used to be that you had to hope that your physician would write you a prescription so that you could get one. But you know what? I suspect, gentlemen, it's because there is such a plague in our society right now that there's so many people that are pre-diabetic that it might be the reason why they finally say, just make it available to people. And they're very inexpensive. Relatively, you can get a continuous glucose monitor, Stelo, right now. I'm not recommending necessarily them, but I know right now, Stelo, they are giving you a blood glucose monitor for 2 weeks for $50. Now, if you want to see how your body's responding to the food and the drink, what a great tool. So, gentlemen, I went and got one about a week ago, and I was floored, and I'm still floored what I'm learning. Now, one thing I learned is I have a trainer, and I go to the gym and I do a 30-minute. It is an intense workout. I don't know what you think about this, Kevin, but I was shocked to see my blood glucose went to 154. That's a lot. Now, it doesn't always go to that, but it was very telling to me. And the thing is, it took almost the whole day for it to come back to baseline normal. See, that's telling me there's something going on with me. And I'm a woman that doesn't eat carbs or sugar. Okay. Or if I did, it would be 20 grams and under. So it's not like I'm, eating and bringing glucose into the body, right? The body can make its own glucose, by the way, listener. It's called gluconeogenesis. And clearly my body's doing that. But my point is that it's a stab in the dark if you think that you know what's going on with your system, when what's exciting is now that there's tools that can tell you that. Now, by the way, also, my blood glucose going up to 150 is not the end of the world, especially it's not like I sat down and ate Haagen-Dazs and it went to 150, right? But here's the thing. We all know that stress has a big proponent in our health, right? We're hearing that all the time. And what I learned, Kevin and Joseph, is that when I saw it go up to 154 in 30 minutes and stay there, what I realized is my body is much more susceptible to stress because I feel like I'm a Zen person. Okay. And I feel like, there's not a lot that I would say stresses me out. But what I did see is that when my body perceives stress, in this case, it was physical stress, it went very high, at least high for me. So I'm very excited about this idea that people can get onto a continuous glucose monitor for a very affordable price and see how their individual bodies, back to what Joseph was saying, your body's talking to you. Do you even know what it's saying?
Mm. Yeah, it takes developing ears to listen to your body. And by the way, Laura, that 154 is the upper levels of normal, and so
Yes,
uh,
good, okay.
I would have you can if I was recommending, I would have you continue to monitor that, and maybe not on a continuous basis, but pretty frequent basis, because sometimes what happens is being on the upper end of normal the next year or year or two after that. You mentioned pre-diabetes; it could even go higher. Hopefully, I'm not trying to curse you, but that's just the way our bodies are. But
Mhm.
you know, many times I've mentioned strategies of our enemy, and I think our enemy is has put inspired the food industry the last 6 or 7 decades to start making our foods atrocious. About probably 55 to 60% of things we buy in the grocery store is worthless, and is he's our children. How many of us have given our children cereals that basically is a sugar block, and so our bodies get out of whack from the beginning dealing with sugar, and it's sugar overload, and then we have obesity, and then one of the ways we can have diabetes is we weigh too much as a people, and then there's not enough insulin that our pancreas are making that can go around to help our entire body. And so one of the things that a diabetes nurse will do or a dietitian will do is try to help a person lower their body weight as a front line through nutrition, exercise, and various other things. So I think it's but one of a couple thousand things that our enemy is doing constantly, disrupting our food intake and polluting it, and creating it to be um, carbohydrate based rather than a healthy, balanced diet. The more carbohydrates we eat, the more we want, and the more dysfunctional our body gets, and therefore has a negative impact on our mental health. But Joseph mentioned thyroid. That is a very important thing too. I don't know the source, but I'm going to quote a statistic. Joseph's probably heard it a number of times. But 38% of Americans who have anxiety and depression, 38%. That's I don't know what we're up to now, Joseph, 300 something million. That's 100 120 million Americans have a thyroid problem.
Wow.
And so that is causing our anxiety and depression. Now, I don't know what's contributing to the hypo and the hyperthyroidism, but it is. And it's like Joseph mentioned, it really disrupts a person's behavior and emotional patterns. My mom has a hyperthyroidism problem that she discovered about a week ago. And she her personality is changing a little bit, not because she wants it to or she has a mental health problem. She has a physiological contribution. So she's getting that regulated and so on. She's not a tirade person or anything, um, but isn't that amazing? Over 120 million Americans. And I've even talked to people and how'd you know? I knew it wasn't in my head, but my doctor wouldn't. And it takes more than going to a general physician or a family doctor because they're only doing tests on certain aspects of the thyroid instead of the full panel. And I'm not going to go mentioning the different aspects of that panel because I'm not an endocrinologist, but one might need a endocrinologist to check these out. A general physician will do a blood assay, or you'll go to a phlebotomist or in their practice, or go to a LabCorp type company or something. And there's other companies. I'm not just advertising LabCorp. And the doctor will get the results, and they'll say, "Hey, your thyroid's doing fine." Well, it may not be. They're only testing one aspect of your thyroid, and there's 10 other aspects. And so an endocrinologist would have the ability and the know-how to do that. And it's amazing. And if it's happening to us, well, it may not be happening the same proportion to a lot of the other countries because they probably don't eat as much trash as we do, or there may not be as many contributing factors. But that's terrible. These people are having the anxiety and depression. And again, when I reveal that to people, and they have those things ruled in or ruled out, a lot of times they find out that it is contributing and it's a weight off of their shoulders because they know it's not mental health.
Yeah.
And, again, I think the devil would have us chasing our tails in exhaustion and not knowing what is causing these things so he can totally just wear us out rather than going to the truth of the matter. So, again, as Joseph mentioned, that's one of the basic things we do on our team is to try to encourage people to get those physical examinations, thorough physical examinations.
I'm curious if either of you know anything about thyroid nodules.
I don't. Joseph, you may.
No, I don't. Well, so what is a thyroid nodule?
So they're growths that show up on the
Oh,
thyroid. I'm just wondering, they're not always cancerous. I'm just wondering if you knew what drove the body to create a nodule in the first place. So I know I'm always amazed at what you guys do know. So, I got to throw those questions out sometimes. So I'm throwing it to you now, Joseph. I just wondered if
okay.
you had an answer.
Yeah, no, that's a great question because I mean, I I'm thankful for the internet. I'm thankful that we have experts and people who are hyper focused on certain areas. We can't do that. And so and I do want to say if you're listening, please see a doctor, somebody who's specialized in these types of things. Don't take everything we say as gospel.
Amen.
Nor
With that
medical
being
nor medical advice. Go see your
right,
doctor. Yeah.
Yes.
right. But also I'm glad that we have the ability to look things up. And I noticed that when I was looking up thyroid problems, one of the things that that it says is that here's a common mental health symptom by condition. If you have hypothyroidism, you could be dealing with depression, fatigue, memory issues, irritability, mental fogginess, apathy. Hyperthyroidism, you have anxiety, nervousness, insomnia, emotional volatility, panic attacks, or rapid mood swings. I mean, I saw a lot of that. And so those things, I always use a car as an example because I wanted to be a mechanic early on in life, and I took some classes. I work on my own cars. I diagnose them, but those types. I like to use those as examples. But if there's a problem in your vehicle, you may not notice it right away, but you have these lights that start flashing, right? And it's saying, "Hey, there's an issue." We have the same thing going on in our body. We have to be in tune with it. We have to understand it. And so if there's a problem, you're like, all of a sudden I feel irritable. It must be my husband. It must be my wife, right? Really? Is it? Or is it that you feel irritable at the time and they're doing something you don't like? Or your children are bugging you? Or somebody looked at you the wrong way. Okay. We need to stop looking at other people as being the problem and start with ourselves first. As I learned how to troubleshoot, whether it was cars, telephones, electronics, anything, I need to run through a diagnostic list and say, okay, I'm going to start here. And then I'm going to move on to the next thing. Number one, we need to start with ourselves. We need to start looking at ourselves first and run through all the diagnostics. That means the physical health of us, and seeing if there's any issues physically within our own bodies. There's a funny video that I saw. Some of you guys would know, and it's called The Nail. And this woman has a nail sticking out of her forehead. And she's telling her boyfriend or husband all her troubles. And he's looking at the nail going, do you realize you have stop talking about the nail. It's not the nail. And she starts going through all these things. And the humor of it is that she needed somebody to talk to tell her about her pain. And the guy's looking at it going, I see what it actually is, and we could take care of it. And she's like, stop trying to fix it. Stop trying to fix it. Right. And in the humor of it is, it's true because sometimes what we do is somebody sees something that's going on. Hey, why are you eating that? Why are you drinking that? That's that's not the problem. My problem is that I have all these things that are going on in my life. I feel depressed. I have all, it's like, no, 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 no. I'm watching you try to fight these things and you're expecting a different result and they don't want to hear it. We need to stop doing that to ourselves.
Yeah.
And we actually have to start looking at ourselves as being the problem first. Go for a checkup. Make sure that we're, getting proper sleep. Make sure that we're doing all these things before we start looking outwards at other people as being the problem.
So well said. And something back to something that Kevin touched on, uh, and that is, the foods, that's available to us, And, listener, we're not telling you anything you don't already know, but it bears repeating again and again and again. And, what we know is that if it comes in a box, it's usually hyper palatable.
Mm.
These scientists, have created these foods. They're Franken foods, and they are meant to hit all the dopamine sensors. They're meant, to hook you and to keep you eating. And it's such an unfair advantage, isn't it, gentlemen, that scientists are creating food rather than eating the food God created? Because,
Right.
when you eat something in nature, there's a signal that you're full, right? You can't overeat. Uh, Again, natural foods, it's very, very hard to overeat them. People cannot overeat, for instance, a ribeye steak. When the body gets a signal, it's done. You could not put another piece in your mouth if you wanted to. The body registers the protein, the fat, and the body says, I'm done, right? And there's a sense of fullness and enjoyment and satisfaction where we all know, listen, I'm a tortilla chip girl, right? That stuff is like, crack for some people, right? You can't have one because they have designed it that you won't have one. But then we go back into this whole blood glucose thing and then the way it affects our thyroid. And so, gentlemen, I don't think you know this about me, but I'm not advocating this for everybody. I'm just going to put it out there because many haven't heard about it. But my husband and I actually eat a carnivore lifestyle. Now, what that means, listener, is we are predominantly animal based, that we don't eat we don't eat starchy carbs. Now, the reason I'm sharing that is because some people's health is so in such a poor place that keto, which is, low carbs, like back to what Joseph mentioned, there's can be some healthier carbs. But if you have a very sick system, if your body's talking to you, like Joseph was talking about, sometimes going no starchy carbs so that the blood glucose can come down, right? Back to the whole insulin thing, it can really help a person. Now, I mention this because I have autoimmunity. However, it's in check. I had such a serious autoimmunity condition that if I ate anything from the nightshade family, and it was progressive, just like Kevin mentioned, over time, I nearly needed to be hospitalized. And it was very, very serious. And since I couldn't trust that even going to a restaurant that they would not put paprika or have soaked it in something that had a nightshade in it, which many times, you go through all that stuff and they go, no, 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 it's not, it's not. And then, you wake up with the raging autoimmunity flare the next day. So I went carnivore for 1 year. And what I have to tell you, gentlemen, is, I wasn't perfect. I was probably 95% carnivore. But a year later, I just wanted to see, I had a lot of healing in my body outside of what I'm going to share with you. But my autoimmunity could, to that issue of nightshades is gone. My body literally healed. Why? Because I stopped eating the things that were triggering for me illness. And I focused on eating meat. I had ribeye steak, I had chicken, I had fish. I ate Yeah, I mean, it's all the stuff that was animal based. And not really butter and stuff because I don't do as well with them. But I just want to say to the listener, what's a balanced diet for you might be different for your next door neighbor. And for me, a balanced diet wasn't helping me with my autoimmunity issue. And so I have to remember sometimes, gentlemen, I still have autoimmunity. It's just that I have it in check now because of the way that I choose to eat. So again, I'm not saying to anybody that they should go carnivore, but I am saying that you should check it out. And if you are having things like constant migraines or any kind of autoimmunity issue, just begin to do some research, because listen, uh, our government, what about 2 or 3 years ago, came out and said cereal was healthier than eggs. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that we could all agree that my ancestors 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 500 years, they were not eating cereal to thrive. They were eating eggs and bacon and meat. They were eating, right, what our ancestors had been eating for really, thousands of years. I'm a creationist, so I don't believe in the million and billion and trillion years ago. I don't buy that. I don't accept it. I'm a creationist and I believe that we did not live in caves. I believe that we were created in a garden and humans were very, very creative and smart because if you look at the scriptures, they were building incredible cities and stuff.
Mhm.
So when I say, listener, when I talk about ancestors, I'm not talking about the monkeys. We didn't come from the monkeys. We were made in the image and the likeness of God. But what our ancestors ate up to, say, 10,000 years ago is they were eating animals, okay? At least after the flood. Jesus, well, you would say God said to Moses, kill and eat. So I don't know what happened, but that was Moses. Did I say that? Noah's call. Sorry about that. Noah's call to kill and eat once the flood had settled. So I just throw that out there for somebody that might be helpful that's dealing with a severe autoimmunity, as I was.
Laura, thank you. This the second time I've heard you mention ribeyes in a few podcasts. So I was thinking, well, while I don't have the authorization to invite everybody over to your house for the next cookout, because I'm sure you'd have nothing but meat. Um, I might if I'm down in your area, I might have to kind of come by and enjoy some ribeye or something like
Yeah.
that.
You and Joseph both. Come on, I'll fix you a
And
big old barbecue.
And you might be delighted to know that we have three lambs. As many of our audience know, we have some lambs on our farm. We have three that we're going to harvest next March. So I don't know how many pounds that's going to be, but we'll have to send you a gift.
Oh.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I had some bad blood glucose results towards beginning of, well, maybe late November, and I knew I had diabetes, but I was being hard-headed. But one of the things that I did to correct my situation, because I want to live many more years, I want to be with my grandchildren and develop this farm and just all the hobbies that I now have. And I quit eating bread at the store because our breads are atrocious. Our forefathers ate 100% grain or barley or something instead of all these ingredients that you had to have a PhD to pronounce. I mean, if we can't pronounce it, we probably shouldn't be eating it as far
Right.
as the ingredients. And so, and the way meat costs are now, you'd have to get a part-time job to afford hamburger meat. So we tend to process our own here because there's value in seeing. I don't know. It's just value in having grass-fed animals instead of eating meats that perhaps the steroids have been introduced, and we would be absolutely shocked if we knew what our cattle are eating these days, things that they weren't meant to eat, and just to bulk them up. But that's good stuff, Laura. And even our vegetables and so on are even genetically modified. That they are taking away from God's creation, and I don't think it's by accident, but it takes a little extra effort. But it's definitely worth it. Probably if one would straighten out even their diet within a short order, that we would have more energy, we would have more clarity of mind, just all kinds of things. And there's wisdom in what our forefathers used to teach us. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. That stuff is still true.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting a plug out there for the apple growers, but there's just good old fashioned wisdom that our forefathers had before all this processed nonsense that we have to consume now.
Well, I do want to say before Joseph kicks into that, but I want to say that as a carnivore, um, I buy grass-fed, grass-finished beef at about $5 to $6 a pound. Now, if anybody has done any shopping for vegetables, and I'm not opposed to anybody buying vegetables or boxed goods. However, when you compare apples to apples, we're spending way more than $5 a pound, especially on the crap food. In fact, I have figured it out sometimes. Yeah, you're buying a box of crackers, let's say, for $3, but it's 3 ounces.
Right.
So when you do the $4 for 3 ounces, a lot of times, honestly, listener, you're paying $15 to $20. You're paying more for that box that has no nutrition in it, that will still leave you hungry. You could have went and bought a ribeye. And so there are cuts of meat, and I agree that not conventional is not always our best choice. However, you know, if you look for good cuts of meat, listener, um, I think if you really compare what you're paying at the grocery store for, let's just stick with the boxed stuff, right? Not the natural stuff that grows from the earth, right? You're going to find you're paying so much a pound that it's shocking. And so, like, for instance, I make my own beef jerky sometimes. You know why? Because, gentlemen, I have figured out it's like $40 a pound if I buy the bag. $40
Hmm.
a pound. I'll make
Hmm.
it myself. So I wanted to throw that before we
Yes.
moved on to another conversation, Joseph.
I love beef
Yeah.
jerky.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm I like meat, but I want to pivot just a little bit and from what we eat to fasting.
Oh, yes.
And because I think there is something to fasting that our society in general has gone away from. I think a majority of our human history, fasting was mostly a um, it was mostly something that was uh, I'm looking for the anti-answer to that. It was involuntary. Okay.
Yes.
Food was
Yeah.
scarce. And so we would eat when we could, we would eat what we could find, and there were times where we had to fast. And I think God designed our bodies to have fasting in mind for our health benefit. And it's possible that with the plenty that we have today, with the ability to not run out of food, to be able to store food longer, we're we're fighting our own system from something that we were designed to do, and it's affecting our mental health. And so I'll tell you what I do. I started this about, I want to say 6 years ago. I would, I decided to stop eating breakfast. Now, I'm going to say this, consult a doctor. Don't do anything, that I'm going to say and go, that's what I need to do. This is just what I'm doing. And the other thing that I do is I stop eating before 7 o'clock.
That's a good one.
I,
Yep.
I try to have dinner for the family around 5 p.m. Now, some of you guys, that's going to be a chore. That's going to be very difficult. I work from home, and so I have the ability to make dinner and have it ready around 5. And then I try my best, and I fail, but I try my best to not eat anything after 7 p.m. I try to stop eating around 5:30 or 6 o'clock, but 7 o'clock is where I want to stop because I want to go not just 12 hours, but sometimes up to 16 or 18 hours before I start eating again. And so it's typically around lunchtime. It'll be late morning, or early afternoon before I start eating again. And when you first start doing it, what happens is your body starts to freak out. Like, oh no, something's different. You know, your what you teach your body to do will your body will get used to. And if anything changes, your body goes, whoa, hold on, what's going on? You did something different and we don't like it right now. But just like you can train your body to eat and have that be normal, you can actually train your body to fast and have that be normal too. So um, I've noticed that I have energy. I notice that I'm not gaining weight. I'm staying within the threshold I want to be. I actually want to be 20 pounds lighter, but sometimes our body is like, oh no, I need to store up because I know that we're going to start fasting. Or, you know, and then also making sure that my portions are not, I'm not going for seconds and thirds. I'm not trying to clean out the dish so that I don't have to put it away. Or I'm not eating so that I could feel better,
Yeah.
because what we're doing is we're training ourselves that if I don't feel good, I need to eat something. And if I'm eating something, then I'm storing that away. And go back to our glucose is going to go up or it's going to go down based on how we're eating. And we can go over the threshold or we could go under the threshold. And both of those are not good. So I think there's something to fasting that we need to start looking at in consultation with a doctor so that we can get our bodies at a level that can handle some of the foods that we have. Because I'm going to guarantee you that as somebody's listening to this going, I don't have a farm. I don't have the ability to source the types of foods I need, or I don't have the time to prepare things the way that I should be doing. And so I need to be able to find a way to sort of balance that out. And if I can find the good foods, if I can avoid the bad ones, I want to work my way there. But some people go, oh, I'm here. I need to get all the way over there right now. It's like, no, start working that way. Same thing with fasting. Don't go cold turkey and just go, I'm not going to eat, because you're going to freak out. Start with the one step at a time. Take a baby step and move from where you are to where you want to be.
That is so good. I'm so glad you brought up intermittent fasting and fasting itself. So, gentlemen, we always love to leave our listeners with some takeaways, right? So, I'd love to hear what you gentlemen would like to leave with the listener, some one or two very important things, that if they don't hear anything else, what you think could bring transformation to their health. I first want to say thank you to the both of you. You always are educating, and I'm always learning from the both of you. And I love that you just give this knowledge that you've spent decades learning, you give it away and you give it freely. Well, I'm going to say to the listener, I really encourage you to get the glucose monitors, whether it's the finger prick or the continuous glucose monitor, which I would more highly recommend so that you can see over the whole day, like how your body is responding. So that would be my one that I would highly encourage you. And then the second would be really what the guys have talked about, what I've talked about, but get off the processed food. It is destroying our health. And I believe it is destroying our nation from the inside out. So that would be my takeaways for the listener. What about you, Kevin?
Well, I want to just comment briefly on the fasting and then give a couple of takeaways. There's a lot of good studies out there that suggest that fasting is definitely beneficial. There are some studies out there that, and of course, a person just can't jump out of the blocks and fast for 3 days. Joseph, you made that very clear to work your way up, and it's a process. But a lot of anxiety is related to our gut health and so on. And I'm not an expert with gut health, but there are studies that show that fasting for 3 days. It doesn't mean completely without water or perhaps food, but you need to drink. And as Joseph said, um, see your doctor, but that it resets our gut health. So that if there's anything with your anxiety that's related to your gut health, that's going to reset it and you'll feel a lot better. And it probably needs to be a regular thing, whether the regular 3-day fast is every couple months or whatever. What I would like to leave with the audience is if you have an anxiety or depression problem, the grounding techniques, getting back to nature, taking the walks. If you're sitting outside in a lounge chair, pull your sandals or your shoes off and just let them rest on the dirt. And then also go see a physician, have a blood check, so to speak, or a blood test. So to check for your blood glucose levels, to check for any other deficiencies. You could have a vitamin deficiency. You could have anemia. You could have any number of things that can be corrected with a simple physical intervention from your physician. And so, and also make sure your complete thyroid testing is being accomplished, not just one or two phases of that, but a complete panel with the thyroid. And if there's anything physiological that's contributing to what appears to be a mental health problem or an emotional health problem, then I'm sure it can be discovered. And there's so many other things neurologically that we can talk about next time or the time after in terms of what could be contributing to your feelings of anxiety, depression, feeling down, and so on. But certainly get the checkups.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I want to say thanks, Laura, for, bringing up this subject because it's very important. This helps me when I am talking with clients because I need to make sure that they are taking care of themselves physically. I think we all need to reevaluate not only what's coming into us, but also what's coming out of us. And because we are affected. If it's something that is affecting us physically and is contributing to our mental health, we need to take responsibility for it. So consult a doctor. Don't take everything we say as gospel, and do your own research. Make sure, because you're unique. I'm different from Laura and I'm different from Kevin, and all of us are different from each other. One size does not fit all. So we have to make sure that we know our own body, just like my vehicles. I know my vehicles. If I'm driving down the road and I hear something, we go, ho, ho, ho. All right, let's figure out what that is. But there's some people, they just turn up the radio and then the wheels fall off and they go, I never saw that coming. Well, yeah, because you decided to ignore the warning signs. Some of you guys are walking around right now with these blaring warning signs going off, and you're like, well, I'm just going to either eat this or take this, or I'm going to turn up the music. And then when the wheels fall off, you're left going, I don't know how this could have happened. And it's like, yeah, actually you did. You just chose to ignore it. Mm-hmm. So I want you guys to stop ignoring the warning signs. Start to figure yourself out. You have to figure yourself out before you can start working on somebody else. Mm-hmm. It goes back to those troubleshooting skills that I learned years and years ago. If I start trying to fight the things that are outside, away from the source, to try to fix the source of the problem, I'm going to be chasing my tail. Mm-hmm. I'm going to waste time. I'm going to waste other people's time and effort and money. We have to start with the source and start to work our way out. And so that means starting with ourselves, whether it's our physical health, whether it's our mental health, or whether it's our spiritual health. And so typically I have like a scripture verse to say, but I don't really have anything right now, but I want to encourage you guys to get into God's word. I want you guys to be in fellowship with others and find a Bible believing church. And if you need help, reach out to us. And then next time Now we're talking about food. We have some other things I think that we're going to hit on is, and it's getting out into nature and what are some of those things that we need to do. So come back ready to listen to what we have, and we'll be able to go through there and come up with checklists, come up with a diagnostic type sheet for our lives so that we can start to figure out our mental health.
Mm.
Good stuff, y'all. Good